Thud, thud, thud. The heavy impacts rolled out, rhythmic as a hammer on raw iron. Soren's slim frame was nothing beside the tiger chief. Yet every chop of his dark-lit fingers fell with the silence of a mountain, breaking loose, deadly final, burying into the beast's torso. The tiger chief's slit pupils snapped tight. Even its savage core condensation force numbed under that relentless barrage. The ebony blade still lodged in its back, hummed, drinking blood. A bone-deep chill seeped through its meridians, 1,000 needles skewering its entire body. It halted its retreat. Its right leg slammed down, a thunderclap that shattered bluestone. Muscles swelled along its spine, bulging like hills. It forced its wounds shut. Golden Gang chi erupted from its arms in a tidal surge. It crossed both arms over its head, sinking into a tight defensive stance. In that exact instant, a cold, mocking voice exploded from behind.
Big brother, I'll borrow your bridge.
A broader tiger paw stomped viciously into its lower back. The tiger chief's pupils shrank. Its colossal frame staggered, toppling toward Soren like Mount Tai folding. Soren's gaze flickered. No room to back off. He pulled his palm back and drove an elbow forward. Dark light condensed at the tip. The strike smashed into the tiger chief's face. Bone split with a ragged howl. At that moment, the young tiger demon launched into the air, bearing a savage grin. Steel, blade claws extended, slashing. Swaths of golden gang, 3 jang wide, tore through the rain like razor, edged silk, cutting off every escape, trapping the elder brother in the same attack. Soren didn't dodge. He drove a knee upward with devastating force, right into the tiger chief's groin. The massive body howled and went slack for a heartbeat. Soren seized an arm and wrenched the mountain of a demon in front of him. A living shield. The golden gang tore through fur and flesh with a wet, sickening sound, setting teeth on edge. Blood gushed. Deep bone, exposing gashes crisscrossed the tiger chief's chest and abdomen. The aftershock of the gang chi faded. A mist of blood hung in the air. Before the tiger chief could scream, Soren was already airborne, twisting. His right leg whipped down with a muffled boom, crashing onto its nape. A brittle crack, cervical bones grinding under strain. The colossal tiger was driven to its knees, the ground cratering into a web of fissures. Soren reached out, grabbed the 3 chi ebony blade embedded in its spine, and wrenched it free. Blood sprayed. The blade arsed black and came down again. The tiger chief felt that killing force descending. It braced all 4 limbs, roaring. Muscles bulged, straining to straighten its body. But its slit pupils widened in horror. The golden gang layered over its nape like armor. Yet the body kept sinking inch by inch. The jet black yi saber cleaved into its face, biting deep into skull. A line of blood shot out. The tiger chief's head jerked violently, but its arms still bulged, muscles corded, barely holding itself upright. The long blade that had earlier struck its back vibrated madly under clenching muscle, nearly springing free. Soren's eyes stayed unreadable. His dark-lit fingers pressed softly onto the tiger's flank. A killing stillness flooded in, an icy abyss breaching flesh and bone. The tiger chief felt a freezing wilt surge through its meridians, its gang chi deadening. At that moment, the air behind him ripped apart. The young tiger demon burst forward, claws swinging. A 3 jang golden arc tore the air with a piercing shriek. Before the glow even arrived, deep furrows were gouged into the ground. Soren sidestepped, snatching the tiger chief's wrist, and yanking hard, the massive body swung sideways. A shield. The golden gang crashed into its back, ripping through skin and flesh. The tiger chief's stifled grunt hadn't faded when Soren twisted with the momentum and drove a knee again into its groin. A muffled thud sent visible ripples out. The tiger chief convulsed, every ounce of strength obliterated. A whip kick slammed, both its knees crashing to the ground, the rock beneath shattering into a web of cracks. Soren backhanded the yi, saber free, spinning blood beads. The blade rose, no hesitation. Crack, bone splintering, muffled but sharp. The blade sank deeper into the skull by another 3 inches. Both demons roared, utterly enraged. Their bodies swelled violently into 3 jang true forms. 2 small mountains draped in mottled fur. They circled slowly, boxing him in. Demonic miasma blanketed the hillside, a tangible shroud churning skyward. Yungan City held its breath, silent as death. Soren clutched the ink saber. His slight silhouette seemed insignificant between those 2 towering peaks. Then he raised his eyes. The Sunforged treasure furnace's restraints were fully released. The Skyfiend Yama outer core shuddered violently. A torrent of rich, murderous demonic force roared into his limbs and bones, like a sluice gate blasted open. At the edges of his dark pupils, a crimson mist surged upward. His loose ink, black robes billowed under an invisible current. On his pale wrists, thin red lines surfaced inch by inch, meridians and acupoints torn open, stretched taut by the overwhelming force. One moment, a fragrant human fleshly elixir. The next, a fiend descending upon the world. The young tiger demon's tail froze midair. Its lithe body tensed involuntarily under the crushing sense of crisis. The tiger chief had already lunged. Its sky-covering shadow swallowed that slender silhouette whole. Its muscular tiger body blanketed in golden gang, a claw descending with obliterating force. And then, everything froze. A single palm pressed softly against its abdomen. The golden gang, dense as solid matter, dissolved instantly under the brutal demonic force. What shattered alongside it was the tiger's entire meridian network. Knuckle-defined fingers tore through skin and flesh, probing into the abdominal cavity, deftly grasping the demon core entangled in sinew and blood, pulling it out bit by bit. A harrowing wail tore across the hillside. Blood plasma ran down the wrist, soaking the sleeve. Soren's face was blank, but the gleam in his eyes was so savage, it chilled the soul. Under his gaze, the demon core was yanked free without effort and stored within the silver bell token. The tiger chief collapsed to the ground, its breath a thread, yet still writhing toward the young man in madness.
Give it back. Give it back.
Soren tilted his gaze sideways, his breath scorched as he fought down the surging urge to inflict torment. He gripped the yi-saber. His movements were meticulous. The head came off with a wet schlick. The heart's essence blood wormed into the bell at his waist. Soren casually tossed the tiger head aside. Raising his eyes, he glimpsed a dark figure fleeing desperately into the depths of the rain. That young tiger demon's gall had long since shattered, limbs frantically clawing through the mud, each stride sending up huge splashes. Soren's eyes hardened. He backhand, gripped the yi-saber, the muscles around his waist and abdomen coiling tight. Power erupted from the soles of his feet, blasting through his shoulder and arm. His right arm drew back like a full-drawn warbow, and he hurled the blade violently. The blade ripped through layer after layer of the rain curtain, freezing rain exploding into white mist around the high-speed spin. The tip pierced with horrifying precision through the tiger demon's hind leg, pinning the whole limb solidly into the mountain wall. The blade edge grated fiercely against the rock, shooting out a brilliant spray of sparks. The tiger demon let out a heart-rending scream, struggling madly, but could only whirl in place, dragging that nailed leg. Soren strode forward, rain sliding down the cold, hard lines of his face. No hesitation. He swung a fist. The tiger demon's head dropped heavily, the bones of its brow emitting faint, snapping cracks. A second punch, a third fist. Each blow landed with the crisp snap of shattering bone and a spray of blood. The tiger fiend's howls faded from a piercing shriek to a low, rasping whimper until nothing but the faintest whine remained. Soren's knuckles were caked with bone shards and matted fur, and only when the tiger's skull was thoroughly caved in, a deformed ruin, did he finally halt that frenzied venting of rage. Slit the belly, harvest the core, collect the spoils. The entire sequence flowed like water, mere breaths from start to finish. When it was done, Soren's body swayed. A bone-deep exhaustion surged over him like a tide. He braced himself against the blood-slicked mountain boulder, gasping heavily. Took a long moment to steady his breathing. After a brief rest, he sank into internal vision. The Skyfiend Yama outer core hung in the Sunforged treasure furnace. Its reserves had bled out, down from half to barely a third. Soren didn't wait. He pulled it out, brought the Flood Dragon nascent core close, and pressed them together. A ravenous, crushing hunger exploded from the outer core. The nascent core shuddered, its pure, dense aura ripped away like water down a drain, pouring into that bottomless pit. In a single heartbeat, the outer core swelled back to 50%, the furnace's suppression limit. Soren slipped it straight into his chi. See, what remained of the Jiao core was a ghost of itself, a wisp, nothing more. He slumped against the rock. Icy rain hammered down, sluicing blood from his skin. In the quiet, the feral edge in his gaze slowly bled away. Soren called up the panel. A thought flickered, and 1,000 years of fiend's lifespan collapsed into a demon beast, crystallite, ghost, light churning across its surface.
Remaining fiend's lifespan, 3,378 years. Asterisk, Core Condensation. Life, Death, Zun Body. First volume. Perfection. Asterisk.
He poured the crystallite in. Deep within his sea of consciousness, the dead silence cracked open. Countless slumbering fiend resentments began to twitch awake, At first, just the little ones, chittering, meaningless whispers. Soren ignored them. He waited.
28 years. Asterisk.
A flood dragon and a tiger, two ancient, monstrous resentments snapped to awareness at the same moment. Creatures once cradled by heaven itself. Even as scraps of will, their pressure scraped against the soul. The serpent fiend probed at the strange black, white radiance veiling Soren. The tiger fiend raged, far louder, far more savage.
46th year. The serpent fiend found itself tangled in the intent of life and death. It howled. It thrashed, trying to snap those black-white chains. Asterisk. 427th year. Soren started fighting back. Death intent to crush the fiend power vitality to steal its essence for his own. Asterisk. 593rd year. The derivation neared its end. Asterisk. That's when the Tulong's resentment stirred. A low, rumbling snarl, a warning. You too, carry the talent for metamorphosis. Asterisk, asterisk. False 293rd year. The Tulong mimicked its living body, with its final remnant form. It performed an entire metamorphosis before Soren's eyes. Asterisk 793rd year. The 6th time the Tulong showed its transformation. Asterisk.
And then a thunderclap detonated inside Soren's skull. Every tangled, shadowed insight fused in one blazing instant. Tame fiend power with vitality. Trap fiends within your own flesh. Subjugate them with death intent. Borrow the Tulong's 100 refined body. Repeat the cycle 9 times. A path of transformation beyond imagination ripped across his mind.
Year 830. This is Celestial Demon Nine Metamorphoses. Core Condensation. Celestial Demon Nine Metamorphoses rare. Uninitiated.
Soren sank deep. The art ignited. Boundless power roared into his limbs and bones, like the silver river of the ninth heaven crashing down. Veins bulged at his temples. Meridians flared through his skin, molten gold, as if lava churned beneath the surface. Every muscle convulsed. Every bone groaned under a crushing, impossible weight. The cliff burst apart. The tiger fiend's corpse detonated into a mist of blood. The whole ridge shuddered, rocks tumbling in showers. Soren slammed into the shattered stone, embedded in the rock face, chest heaving. A strangled rasp tore from his throat. Drake, demon power, 100 refined to a long physique, samsara zen body, all of it fused, flooding every inch of him at once. Just stepping past the threshold had already flattened every prior foundation. Soren shoved himself up. Sleeves billowed. Molten, gold flood, dragon tail patterns crept from his wrists, winding up his forearms, snaking toward his shoulders. The markings swam under the skin, a dark gold luster. Like some ancient, sleeping totem, clawing its way awake. Only when his body tamed that power did the pattern sink back into muscle and bone. Not a trace left. He lifted his face to the sky. Rain hammered down, churning the mountain tracks to mud. Soren channeled nothing. He just stared into the curtain of water, and the rain bent, parted around him. Droplets slid along an invisible surface, as if striking a barrier they couldn't breach. Not a single one touched his skin, summoning wind and rain. Nowhere near divine power, but no mere martial artist could pull that off. Soren's lips pressed thin. He retrieved the last 2 tiger cores, his final reserve, originally meant for the heavenly demon outer pill. Yet the first metamorphosis alone had already eclipsed a nascent core martial artist. Not matched, stomped flat. What would minor completion even look like? Soren called up the panel.
Remaining fiend's lifespan, 2,228 years. Asterisk, year 1. You prepare to attempt the second metamorphosis. But first death intent must erase every scrap of residual consciousness inside the flood dragon's power. Asterisk.
Soren rolled back his sleeves. Fingertips brushed the flood, dragon tail markings, now hidden beneath the skin. Only when every remnant soul was dead would this power truly bear the name Shen.
Year 72. Under the torment of death intent, you hear an unwilling dragon's roar, a faint, distant cry, rising from some bottomless abyss. It struggles, coils, and at last fades, unwilling, into silence. You take out a tiger core and swallow it. The immortal fiend body, forged by the first metamorphosis, takes the violent fiend power with relative ease. Refining efficiency soars.
A tiger core, at least 5 times the cultivation reserves of the Jiao core. Based on the old math, that meant 1,500 years. An absurd number. But Celestial Demon Nine Metamorphoses was never a human martial art. Imprison fiends inside your own body. Steal their innate, divine abilities. What kind of martial cultivator does that?
Year 631. You fully refine the tiger core. Second metamorphosis complete. You take the form of the Mountain Lord, patrolling the 100 beasts. Your tiger soul quakes the peaks. No evil dares encroach. Evil spirals flee. Blazing eyes discern gods and ghosts. You command souls and dispatch sprites across the 4 wildernesses. Asterisk.
Across Soren's spine, a brilliant tiger silhouette seemed to coalesce from empty air. 100 beasts bowed their heads. Evil spirits scattered. Pressure surged, thick as mountain ranges, heavy as peaks. The power of the Jiao Immortal now fused with the Mountain Lord's might. A second flood of force tore through him far beyond the last. But Soren was ready. He clenched his fists, hammering the rampant demonic power back down.
Not enough.
His eyes flickered. He ran the mental calculation against the heavenly demon outer pill's full force strike. Still, a sliver short. The pill condensation realm crushed nascent. Pill by default. His body alone couldn't kill that tiger demon with a single palm. Without the outer pill deployed, he was probably half a step behind the verdant peak Jiao Lord.
So a third metamorphosis counts as minor mastery.
Soren looked down at the single tiger core left in his palm. Probably not enough. He slowly withdrew his technique. Time to head back to Yong'an City. Far away, on a mountain peak, a much larger tiger silhouette raised its head and roared.
How?
The sound wave rolled over the ridges. Pine needles shook loose in showers. The creature clawed at the dirt with its forepaws, gouging deep furrows, spraying gravel. The grand feast it had laid out for itself had instead bloated the bellies of those 2 brats. For a long while, only the mournful wind sobbed through the woods. No response came. The Mountain Lord's raised forepaw hesitated, hanging in midair. Then,
How?
a second roar exploded. Where the sound wave passed, birds on the branches convulsed and dropped, wings twitching twice before going still. Every beast in range trembled, flattened to the ground. Even insects crawling from the soil froze dead in their tracks. The Mountain Lord spun around. Ferocity blazed in its eyes. It took one step toward Yong'an City. Claws sank deep into the mountainside. Moments later, it slowly pulled the paw back. A low, mournful howl rumbled from its throat, thick, choked with something raw. Then that enormous body bunched and sprang, bolting toward the abode of its sworn brother, the white deer. Whoever the killer was, it wanted them dead. Nilavajiang froze mid-step. A low, puzzled grunt escaped him as he turned back. 3 tiger roars tore through the woods. Each one meant something different. Rosalind's voice came tight and urgent.
Move now.
She barely got the words out before blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. Her sleeve came up fast, swiping it away. Let the Mountain Lord catch even a whiff of weakness and he'd be back. Alden didn't wait. Half a foot gone, body wrecked, he lurched toward Yong'an City. Every step left a dark print on the ground. The old man had fought like death itself, burning his life force to its last ember. Weak in the pill condensation realm, sure, but to the people here, he was the only wall between them and oblivion. He just prayed that when he reached the Deng clan compound, he wouldn't find it turned into a slaughterhouse. Alden passed through the city gate. On the main street, magistracy bailiffs hurried past. The common folk stayed hidden indoors. From grand compounds with polished plaques, wailing drifted out. Alden let out a ragged breath.
Still crying. Nothing serious then.
The blood he left behind was a stark trail, leading all the way to the familiar courtyard gate. 2 town guards stepped out. At the sight of him, they bowed, hands shaking.
Elder, your righteousness.
Shove your righteousness!
Alden muttered, barely a whisper. He shoved past them and crashed into the main hall. 100 or so faces turned to him. Fear still flickered there, but everyone was accounted for. Alden bent, hands braced on his knees, and counted with trembling fingers. 1, 2, 3. His eyes widened.
Not a single one missing.
He stared at the young girl in the main seat. Liana got up, a bit awkward, and waved a hand.
This really wasn't me.
She'd just sat there all night, nervously sipping through 7 or 8 cups of tea. Nalav Jungsi and Rosalind stepped in together. Nalav Jungsi's gaze swept the room, then hardened.
You are still here! Where is Soren?
Liana rubbed her temples.
He said he'd take a walk.
Nalav Jung's head snapped around.
Just now.
Liana pinched her fingers.
It has been about 4 hours, I think.
A helpless laugh escaped Rosalind. She found a seat, pressed hard against the wound under her robe, and fresh blood seeped at the corner of her lips. She'd told Soren not to waste effort on the Deng clan, but she never thought he'd abandon Liana too. That kind of person made a perfect demon hunter hard to kill. They'd only agreed to a simple run through, but the moment he stepped out, Soren had to pull this. Nalaf Jiangxi's eye twitched. His knuckles cracked. Regret coiled in his gut like a snake. The way Soren had taken that silver bell token so casual, he should have recognized the reckless streak in the kid. Should have tied him to his waist. Rosalind forced herself to the doorway, hand pressed to her lower belly, brows drawn tight. A gust of wind, thick with blood, slapped her face. Her pupils shrank. Her body locked up before she could think. No presence at all, but the threat scraping her skin felt like a cold blade kissing her throat. Soren strode in, drenched. Fiend blood had soaked his robes through, dripping from his cuffs in slow, steady beads. With each step, a small, dark stain bloomed on the floorboards. The hall filled with the reek of raw gore. Heavy breathing was the only sound. Rosalind took 2 steps back, her eyes catching the patches of fiend blood on his front. Now she understood the crushing pressure. It was the Mountain Lord's bloodline. Just the scent of its dead offspring made her body pull taut as a bowstring. Soren sized them up. Both had wan auras, pale faces. He let out a soft sigh. Demon Suppression Division, Demon Hunters. Didn't matter which, they never failed to disappoint. Both cubs were dead now. The Mountain Lord would bear a grudge, but his own power had taken a leap. Celestial Demon Nine Metamorphoses was nearly at minor mastery, and the Sky Fiend Yama outer core had fully formed. If it came for revenge, who would kill whom wasn't certain? He stepped past Rosalind, pulled out a chair, and sat. The Yi-saber hit the table with a short, sharp clang, but it landed like a weight on every chest in the room. The air went still. He was about to close his eyes and steady his breathing when he sensed every gaze pinned on him. Nelav Jiangxi exhaled a cloud of stale air. The shock on his face was plain.
Aren't you going to say something?
Soren's robe, soaked black with fiend blood, told a very different story from Liana's casual report. What had happened in those 4 hours? Soren lifted his eyes. After cycling the Sky Fiend Yama outer core, a strange exhaustion had settled over his spirit. But if they wanted him to talk...
I need the Mountain Lord's aura. What will it cost me?
Luck hadn't been with him this time. The Tiger Core gave up no bloodline power, so he couldn't track it the way he'd tracked the Flood Dragon. The grin on Nalaf Jiangse's face died. He'd expected Soren to brag about his kills. Instead, the first words out of his mouth were about hunting a Mountain Lord at core formation perfection.
Have you lost your mind? Do you even know what core formation perfection means? That old Flood Dragon at Verdant Peak, already at core formation, it couldn't last 100 exchanges against a Mountain Lord. And besides...
His throat locked. The words white deer seared in his mind, and he jammed them back down. That thing was the nightmare of countless demon hunters. Under their proudest intelligence, it had slaughtered a demon, suppressing general without a sound.
You keep prying, then dodge the answer.
Soren clicked his tongue and leaned back in the chair. If he didn't root it out, he'd never rest easy. Nalav Jiang's face went sour, his knuckles whitened. A long moment later, he forced his frustration down.
Without its aura, what do you expect me to say?
Who said I didn't get it?
Rosalind opened her palm. From her silver bell token, a thread of golden aura drifted up, fine as spider silk. The flame on the table guttered. The wisp coiled gently, pressing outward with a subtle, oppressive weight. The lesser cultivators in the Deng clan held their breath, a cold unease crawling over their skin. Nelav Jiangxi's eye twitched.
I saw you crush it.
Just a little illusion. Tricks the eye.
A faint smile touched Rosalind's pale lips.
I can offer more than just the aura. If you can get me precise information, I can also request a demon-suppressing general to stand guard for you.
Soren's face stayed calm.
Condition.
Escort me to Blackstone Pool. I have a secret order from General Yu, meant for his adjutant stationed there.
As she spoke, she pressed a hand to her lips again. Fresh blood seeped through her fingers. Soren thought of those fierce generals who guarded the border's year. Round a trip wouldn't hurt. He pulled his silver bell token from his belt and held it lazily between his fingers.
Deal.
Liana had been standing quietly aside, her gaze distant, fingers twisting the edge of her sleeve. The moment she saw that silver bell token, her eyes flew wide. If she remembered right, wasn't Nelev Jiangxi just teaching Soren the most basic rules a few days ago? Rosalind's stunned stare lingered on the token, then shifted to Nelev Jiang, skeptical.
What are you gaping at me for? Think he is not worthy?
Nelev Jiang shot her an irritated glare. With Soren's strength, as long as he didn't die, he was destined to become a gold bell demon hunter. A mere silver bell token was enough to make her look so unsophisticated. Rosalind pulled her gaze back. A flick of her finger sent the golden mountain lord aura shooting into Soren's silver bell token.
If there is nothing else, we'd best leave soon.
She stood and walked out of the hall. After Rosalind left, Soren finally shut his eyes. The instant that Mountain Lord's aura surged into him, a muffled roar detonated inside his divine consciousness. Like some primordial beast, slumbering since the desolate ages, was slowly opening its eyes deep in his bloodline. His marrow quaked. His heart pounded, threatening to burst from his chest. With no change in his face, he returned the silver bell token to his belt, pushing down that moment of raw instinctive dread. The taste of a perfected fiend core. He hadn't sampled that yet. Alden stepped into his path. The old man, covered in wounds, bowed deep, his voice weighted with solemn gratitude.
Many thanks, young hero, for protecting my Deng clan and safeguarding Yongan City.
Behind him, the Deng clan disciples all lowered their heads in unison. Soren didn't pause. He just waved a hand.
It was my duty.
Before the words faded, he'd already vanished into the blinding glare beyond the courtyard. 5 days later, the forest of Blackstone Pool lay thick and silent. Rotting leaves, a foot deep, gave way underfoot without a sound. Miasma and the wet reek of decay hung in the air, coiling into a viscous shroud that pressed against the mouth and nose. The canopy swallowed the sun. Under it, the gloom was nearly twilight. Soren sheathed his blade. A spray of fiend blood splattered against the moss, and the head of a lesser spirit beast rolled into the rotting muck. Rosalind had swapped her elaborate robes for plain cyan. Without the heavy makeup, her face still carried a hint of its natural allure. She frowned at the young man's back ahead of her, and the words finally broke free.
Third time now.
Soren didn't turn. His tortoise breath technique churned quietly. A fly's leg was still meat. If they ran into fiends with sharper senses, he might just hook something bigger. He'd picked up this trick from the demon hunters themselves. Rosalind said nothing more. She stepped up to walk beside him and raised a hand to point ahead.
We're here. Liu Bin has a bad temper. Let me do the talking.
At the edge of the forest, a row of dark wooden structures squatted on the earth. Officers clustered around a campfire, their ink-black tunics with cloud patterns flickering in the firelight. Rosalind stopped. Her voice came out cold and clear.
By order of General Yu, I bring a letter for Vice Commander Liu. Announce us.
The officers didn't even look up. Their reply came in perfect, mechanical unison.
Demon hunters. Commander Liu's orders. Blackstone Pool receives no demon hunters. He will not see you.
The campfire crackled. A sharp light kindled in Rosalind's eyes.
First he claimed illness, then he was away. And now when General Yu personally sends me, he fobs us off with the same excuse. Leaning on seniority has its limits.
Her voice sharpened further.
General Yu respects his years and treats him with courtesy. But don't forget the chain of command.
The officers rose, slowly, their right hands moved together, resting on sword hilts.
Commander Liu said, no demon hunters.
Steel scraped free, inch by inch, a shrill chorus that clawed at the eardrums.
Of course. With your cultivation, you could always try to force your way in.
Before the words could settle, 3 figures strode from the wooden buildings. Behind them, over 100 officers filed out, steel blades bared, blocking the path. The 3 vice commanders at the front fixed them with cold, heavy stares, and shouted in unison.
Blackstone Pool is a restricted area. Without General Yu's written decree, any trespasser will be treated as a fiend.
Rosalind laughed. She stepped right up to that wall of blades. Her voice was light, icy.
I have no decree, only a letter. But I'd like to see just how you plan to treat me as a fiend.
100 swords lifted as one, the blades catching the campfire, a rolling blood-red sheen like scales. A piercing shriek tore the air. A steel spear came streaking in, its tip slamming into the ground 3 inches from Rosalind's feet. Mud and stone burst upward, the shaft thrumming, decayed leaves spiraling in its wake. A hoarse voice ground out from the hut.
Liu, have guarded this place for years. You are the first to dare barge in.
The door swung open. A towering figure emerged, wrapped in a grim wolf mantle. White hair hung to his chest. The gold dragon embroidery at his collar blazed even in the dim light. He walked, step by step, until he stood before Rosalind. 5 fingers closed around the quivering spear. With a sharp yank, he pulled it free, looking down from his height.
If General Yu has business with me, he sends his own people. What right does a demon hunter like you have to meddle in the demon suppression division's affairs?
Rosalind ground her teeth. She flicked a sealed letter from her silver bell token.
By regulation, you've missed 3 consecutive debriefings. General, you spared your pride by not suspecting you of colluding with fiends. The least you can do is look at this letter.
Liu Bin turned his back slowly.
These old eyes are blurry. Can't make out letters from people of unclear origin.
His words were ice.
Take your people and scram!
The wall of blades pressed closer. Rosalind drew a long breath. She glanced sideways at the silent youth behind her.
You agreed to escort me, to put this letter directly into his hands. Does that still hold?
Soren studied the colleagues before him. Something in this affair suddenly sharpened. He stepped forward.
It holds.
The officers' faces went slack with shock. That simple exchange, just 2 people, felt like a hammer blow, shredding the rules that had stood here for years. Liu Bin spun. His spear surged upward, tip tearing the air with an ear-splitting crack. Rosalind, injuries and all, sidestepped, her figure flashing away from the thrust. She twisted at the waist, both palms snapping out. The force slammed the spear shaft from both sides. Core formation stage power detonated. The steel groaned, bending hard, but Liu Bin rode the momentum, sliding the spear forward. The deflected tip changed direction. Its edge carved a cold, straight line, the shriek splitting the air. Killing intent, solid, aimed straight at Soren's forehead. The gale force wind pressed his robes flat before the tip arrived, fabric snapping. A silvery radiance blazed, like a white dragon exploding from a ravine, piercing the eyes, deafening. The spear tip sundered the air. Cold gleam aimed at the throat. Soren's robe snapped, his hair whipping. A strange glint flashed in his dark eyes. He didn't retreat. He stepped in, sidestepping, just as the tip reached him. His long fingers clamped down like iron pincers, seizing the shaft with brutal force. Boom, chi erupted. His 5 fingers sank into the tempered steel. Metal shrieked and warped, a tortured scream. The force meant to tear a fiend core was strangled still in a heartbeat. Air burst with a muffled blast, dust exploding in a radial wave. Liu Bin's face twisted. He tried to yank the spear back. It didn't move. In the next instant, the spear was wrenched free, held crosswise in Soren's hand. Disarm, reverse, one fluid motion. Rosalind lunged with palms raised, then froze midair.
Insolent whelp! You dare humiliate me!
The old general's beard bristled. His hair wild. He raged his core to the limit, killing intent surging again. Soren raised an eyebrow.
She is just wounded. But aren't you starting to stink already?
The words barely left his mouth when he hurled the spear back. Empowered by the Celestial Demon Nine Metamorphoses, the shaft ripped a sonic boom, blasting back. The butt slammed into Liu Bin's abdomen with a wet crunch, impaling him to the ground. Flesh and blood flew, the metal quivering with an unending hum. Rosalind still held her striking pose, shock churning in her eyes. Soren stepped forward. He brushed her suspended palm aside, casual, and crouched by Liu Bin. His hand reached to tear open the ink. Black uniform.
Get away.
Liu Bin, ignoring the bloody hole in his gut, scrambled to block him in panicked desperation. Slap. A crisp crack of flesh shattering. Liu Bin's head snapped sideways. Blood foam and broken teeth sprayed out. His white beard stained dark. His brain buzzed with thunder. Rosalind's pupils shrank. The flesh under Liu Bin's ribs was gone, melted away. The white bones were pitted, corroded. Inside the chest cavity, his organs squirmed under a coat of foul green fluid. The reek of rot hit them, a stench so thick they could almost see his heart throb. The surrounding officers drained to ash, silent. Rosalind's breath snagged. Shock and fury bled from her voice.
No wonder you refused to report.
Liu Bin's roar ripped through blood, caked teeth.
I demand a martial temple purification. I fought my whole damn life. I earned Grand Demon Suppressing General.
Soren stood, eyes cold on the old man.
Open your eyes. Does this look like General Yu's handwriting?
He snatched the letter from Rosalind and held it flat in front of Liu Bin's face. The prisoner's eyes bulged, shot with red, his breath a ragged mess. Finally, the bluster died. Soren pulled the letter back. With a quick flick, he tossed a command token. It sliced the air and cracked against the ground, sharp as a broken order. Black iron markings burned into every onlooker's gaze. He shook out the Grimwolf mantle, let the wind catch it, and swung the ink, dark cloth, across his shoulders. The air around him thickened, heavy as plate armor, stifling every breath.
Under the sovereign Soren, by general use command, I hold this site.
His tone flat. He swept his eyes over the officers.
Bind him.
Nobody moved slow. Officers' throats bobbed as they hauled out the demon binding chain. It clattered, its bone, chilling chi lock hissing into the night while they closed on Liu Bin. Soren settled behind the desk. The lamp's beast, oil flame, danced silent, lighting the cold sheen on his mantle's fur. His fingers flipped through reports, the papers rasp, like a dull knife on eardrums in the stifling room. The door creaked. Rosalind slipped in, favoring her side, the tang of blood drifting with her. Soren didn't look up.
Bring 2 vice commanders here.
Rosalind's steps hitched. She'd pegged him for a quick file, flip, a show of procedure, then dragging the prisoner back to the city. But his voice shut out any pushback. She swallowed the questions, rising and turned to open the door. Soon, 2 vice commanders shook by the desk. Liu Bin was trussed tight, forced to his knees, his face a smear of dirt and dried blood.
Ni Strollshend.
One returned the token, his Adam's apple jumping. Soren turned a page. The paper snapped.
The fiends of Blackstone Pool. What's the status?
The vice commander's head dropped, shame curving his spine.
Reporting to your excellency, it's a venomous toad over 4,000 years old. It's formed a fiend core at core formation stage, and it's a devil with poison. The pool it holes up in has no bottom. The water's a toxic fog made liquid. Even general, you can't guarantee a win. He ordered us to wear it down slow, but since Commander Liu got hurt...
Since he got hurt?
Liu Bin jerked his chin up, red eyes popping. His raspy howl split the room's dead quiet.
You bastards hid like cowards. Let that monster roam Azure Province like its own backyard. Nestroshend, you got 1 token from General Yu, and you think you can flip the sky?
The vice commanders' faces ghosted white. Rosalind's brows pinched. She started to warn Soren. The Toad Sovereign's terrain advantage far outweighed a normal core formation beast. But the words died, because Soren just kept leafing through papers, like the shouting was fly buzz. Then he moved. His right wrist twitched. The teacup by the desk vanished. In the space of a blink, it exploded in Liu Bin's face. Porcelain shards sprayed like darts, scalding tea, splashing his eyes and nose. The old man screamed and crashed backward. Blood and tea streaked down his brow, where fragments cut. The room fell tomb, silent. Soren drew back his hand, tapping his fingers on the desk to flick off tea leaves.
When I don't ask, you don't speak.
Rosalind shivered. Not fear, elate. Jolting realization. How had he thrown that cup? She'd caught no sound of movement. He sat there easy, still scanning reports, yet every officer's breath locked up tight. Liu Bin curled on the floor, harsh gasps leaking out, but not another word. Soren shut the file. The soft thud made both vice commanders jump.
It's still at Blackstone Pool.
Our count says the beast will be back at the pool within 2 days.
He trailed off, chin nearly touching his chest. Soren rose. His cloak's hem brushed the chair.
Lead.
Rosalind's heart clenched. Now she got it. He meant to go in, not scout, not clean, but hunt. 3 vice commanders led. Over 100 demon, suppressing officers fanned a path. The column passed rotting wood huts, cut around the hill. The ground turned wet and soft, without warning. Each step sank, pulling a nasty slurp. Mud clung like a live thing. Every foot lift a thick, sucking sound. The reek of decayed plants spiked, mixed with a sweet, sick stench that stabbed straight into the skull. Cold didn't seep from skin in. It climbed from deep earth, crawling up leg bones, up the spine. The group stopped. Ahead, the land dropped into a huge round hollow, a wound in the wilds like a fallen star's punch. At its center, a black, lightless pool nestled in shadows. Its surface lay flat still, yet it kick-started a primal dread, like something vast would tear through any second. Green mist drifted over the water in curls, moving alive, like twisting low, slicing moonlight into weird shards. Sometimes a thread of fog licked past the hollow's edge. The plants there yellowed and died, drained empty. Soren stood at the rim, his mantle's fur stirring in the night air. The dead pool reflected in his eyes, dark and flat as the water. Black stone pool sat in the heart of the hollow. 100 yards wide, no ripple. A chill that bit bone. Green mist hugged the surface, slow, swaying like a veil over the abyss. Rosalind yanked the chain, shoving Liu Bin forward.
In open fight, Toad Sovereign might not beat Lord Yu, but this freezing pool's been its shield for years. Fiends command their own arts. Same realm, they get sky and depths, and this cold won't touch its hide. It's made this its wall.
She blew out a breath.
You've seen the setup. Time to go.
Soren stared at the water, face calm.
No rush. 2 more days. Heal your wounds.
My deepest thanks.
Rosalind's eyelid jumped. This whole trip, the first time he'd shown concern, and his brand of concern was stranding her in this marrow, freeze, poison, fog hole to recover. She got it.
You want to ambush Toad Sovereign from out here?
The toad had never finished Liu Bin. It just corroded him slow with its sly venom arts. Not mercy, but fear of a death match. Fear of Yu Longdao sending someone stronger. After all this fragile standstill, the fiend must have gotten cocky. This was the perfect crack. Rosalind locked eyes on Soren. A cold thought hit. If they actually killed the toad fiend, who'd claim its heart's blood? He turned, brushing his heavy cloak, face blank.
What's the issue?
She glared at that face, jaw tight. The man had the swagger of a raw brute, but a mind sharp as a razor. He'd said he'd help her handle a problem, but now she was the outsider. Soren pulled his gaze away and stepped into the tent. Before, she'd offered her aura as pay for escort, thinking she'd call a demon, suppression general once intel was set. Like soothing a kid. Liu Bin kept his head low, the smirk at his mouth edge deepening. A wounded core formation fighter and a green body, cultivating kid, aiming to kill Toad Sovereign. He'd figured his luck was gutted. Never saw this twist coming. Once those two got swallowed, the Toad Fiend might just keep him posted here. A day and night passed in quiet. Rosalind shut her eyes, steadying breath. Sometimes she glanced at the black-robed youth in the distance. He sat still as rock. The Tortoise Breath Sutra was honed perfect, his aura flat and dead. Mastering the Tortoise Breath Sutra to that degree was insane all by itself. She couldn't stop the question.
With gifts like yours, you must have been spoiled since birth. How'd you twist into this paranoid mind?
Soren didn't turn.
Doti the Han. Right. The canine. Fiends of West. Suburb. The Black Ape. On East Mountain. The Fox Clan. At North Cliff.
Cypress Cloud County barely had any fiends, but every single one wanted him dead. Now he could add the Flood Dragon of Sunspring River and the Tiger Lord of Zitai Mountain to that list. He leaned against the icy tree trunk, reciting each name in silence. The canine fiends, the Black Ape, the Fox Clan, the Flood Dragon, the Tiger Lord. Each one pressed down until his aura thickened, dark and heavy. Then a stench rolled in, reeking baleful fiend, chi drifting from afar. The aura didn't even bother to hide. Sloppy, indifferent. On the black mud slope, a scab-headed man with a bulging round belly swaggered toward the frigid pool. He slapped his stomach, let out a belch, then grinned and waved a dismissive hand at the Demon Suppression Division officers.
Hard work, everyone. Run along now. Send my regards to your Commander Liu.
The lieutenants dropped their gazes. Liu Bin's relentless orders had beaten the spine out of them. Blow by blow. They couldn't even meet this fiend lord's eyes. Rosalind shot to her feet. Off in the distance, the ink-clad figure had already vaulted skyward. The instant his boots crushed the cold wind, his robe snapped and howled, an ink-black banner ripping across the heavens. His body cleaved the frozen air, which screamed and tumbled aside. He plunged like a meteor. His feet struck the scab, headed man's shoulders. Bones shattered with a blunt crack. Shoulder blades caved in, inch by inch, under that brutal force. The arm drooped, boneless. Ink saber left its sheath in the same breath. The edge sliced through the cold mist and bit into the neck. A wet, gritty tear of flesh, muffled but stark. Dark green blood sprayed, steaming, reeking, splattering on the frozen earth to sizzle. Toad Sovereign dropped to one knee, his huge hand clamping desperately onto the blade. Rosalind was already on him. Cyclonic martial essence surged between her palms. Air, shattering concussions, rumbling like muffled thunder as she drove a savage strike at his temple. The gash in Toad Sovereign's neck gaped to the bone, dark green plasma gushing. Yet his mouth twisted into a hideous grin.
This sovereign spoke to you kindly, and you dare push your luck?
The words barely left his lips before a jet of dark green venom shot from his mouth. The poison bolt sliced through her martial essence like an arrow, scraping past Rosalind's wrist. Corrosion sizzled, Skin and flesh rotted and caved at the merest touch. The burn spread fast. In a breath, white bone gleamed through. Her expression didn't shift, just a twitch, almost too faint to see, at the corner of her eye. The force in her palms didn't retreat. It surged. Denser cyclones of essence coiled tighter as she drove another strike at his temple. Toad Sovereign had hoped the poison would force her back. Instead, she traded a wound for a kill. He twisted to wrench the saber free and bolt, but the strength pouring from that lean youth strained even a fiend. Crack. Her palm struck home. Hairline fissures spidered from the temple, racing across his skull in an instant. The massive body hurtled sideways. Before he hit the ground, Soren closed in. Ink saber fractured into dozens of cold light arcs. In a blink, he struck scores of times, each cut aimed at vitals. The wet thud-thud, thud of splitting flesh rang out. Continuous dark green blood rained, drenching the fiend lord in his own gore. The blade carried a ferocious, baleful fiend force. Every stab left a wisp of rampaging, tearing power deep in his body. At the same time, Rosalind used her aura to slow the rot in her wrist, then stepped in to seal off any retreat. She swung her palms up from below, forcing the sky, filling martial essence into a compressed strike meant to shatter his tendons and bones. Their assault was seamless, no opening. In his moment of crisis, Toad Sovereign thrust out an arm. The limb swelled and warped, transforming in a blink into a colossal toad arm, nearly 30 yards long. The skin bubbled with thick pustule like nodules. Wrapped in a foul wind, it lashed savagely at the youth. His legs shifted too, shorter than the forelimbs, but still 7 or 8 yards long. The round, bulging mucus, slick feet hammered viciously toward Rosalind. Soren stepped onto the warty, gnarled limb and brought Ink Saber down with brutal ferocity, the blade carved upward from between the fingers, cleaving flesh like firewood, layer by layer, until it sank entirely into the meat. Toad Sovereign shrieked, a wild manic howl. His hind leg drove into Rosalind with a desperate full-force strike. Already wounded, she faced a toad foot larger than her entire body. Both palms thundered forth. Martial essence punched through, blasting a hideous gaping hole in the foot. But the colossal force still launched her backward. She tumbled through the air, flipping several times before she could stabilize. She lifted her gaze. A towering monstrosity loomed before her, over 20 yards high. Gray-green skin riddled with tumorous protrusions. Its vast shadow smothered down like a hill, swallowing the light. Ribbit. A long, deep, resonant croak burst forth. The sound wave rolled across the ground like muffled thunder. The frozen earth trembled faintly. The surface of the frigid pool rippled in fine patterns. Even the drifting green mist churned violently from the shock.